Hello boys, welcome back to another session of video tutorials, and this session is meant for class 11th biology students, and this is meant for 25th August 2020, and our memory as usual always helps us in connecting what we have studied with the present what we are going to study. Yesterday we were discussing in our session about the respiratory system in human beings, and I have asked you to draw this diagram, and along with this diagram I told you to draw this also. I hope you have drawn, and you must remember the various parts. I told you to know what is the function of each part: epiglottis, larynx, trachea, and you must remember the trachea is taking a bifurcation to left and right, entering into left lung and right lung. That's called bronchus. And then you got lungs as such. These are the lungs, okay, lungs, and the lungs have got perforations, holes. They're called alveoli, and there is a liquid present in that, and that's called pleural fluid. And then bronchioles, and most important, diaphragm. And I said you must remember that diaphragm is a muscle. I hope you have drawn the diagram, but I am waiting for your postings wherein you have drawn, labeled, and written the significance of each part. So far no improvement I have not yet got. And then we have got entire respiratory system. You got a nasal cavity, then you got paranasal senses, and of course nostrils, and oral cavity, pharynx, then larynx, okay, and then the trachea, most important. We call it air tube, okay. One is digestive tube, another is air tube. Trachea is air tube, and then the branches or bronchus, here bronchus you can see, and then lungs as such, left lung and right lung, okay, two lungs are there, balloon like structures, and then alveoli, perforations on that, and muscle, you can see the beautiful diaphragm muscle, and of course you got what is called a Kirchhoff trachea. And there is a normal question why trachea cannot collapse. It's a tube, why it cannot collapse. So for such things I am expecting answers from you. And then parietal pleura and visceral pleura, lung surfaces and themselves. So if you are not yet drawn, please draw now. Now in this session I am going to tell you about the mechanism of breathing. So respiration involves the following steps. First and foremost, what is respiration? Yesterday I said oxidation of glucose. So you got glucose plus oxygen releasing 36 ATP. This is our main aim. Currency, energy currency, ATP. Plus in the bargain some water will be released, plus CO2 will be released out. So respiration purpose is this. So only we say energy purpose. And for this to happen, oxygen should be in and carbon dioxide should be out. So that is breathing. Breathing or pulmonary ventilation, by which atmospheric air is drawn in and CO2 rich alveolar air is released out. And diffusion of oxygen and CO2 across alveolar membrane. From air it has come to trachea, respiratory tract, enters into alveoli, and then transport of gases by the blood. Now from alveoli it enters into blood, and diffusion of oxygen and CO2 between blood and tissues. From blood it enters into tissues, and utilization of oxygen by the cells for catabolic reactions, and resultant release of CO2. So this is the various steps that are involved in respiration. But first and foremost thing is breathing. So I said breathing is a physical process wherein you can observe yourself. One can observe oneself the movement of chest cavity. So in this you can see there are two things. First is inspiration. How we inhale oxygen inside. So you can see here, first and foremost, the diaphragm. It is diaphragm contracted, and because of that, what is important? The thorax, the chest cavity should expand. When the chest cavity expand, rib cage has to expand. And there is a bone called sternum, ribs and sternum. So these are raised. That's how your chest cavity raises. And when chest cavity raises, the diaphragm goes down, there is expansion. A lot of space is available in the chest. Once the space is available, lungs being elastic, they also expand. So more and more air enters inside. And once this goes, as we said just now, the oxygen from alveoli enters into blood. From blood it goes to cells, from cells to tissues, then catabolism, and carbon dioxide is released. Carbon dioxide also will come back in the same way. And once that comes back, physically how do we expel that? Now there has to be pressure on the lungs. The lungs have to be compressed. So if the lungs have to be compressed to expel forcibly the carbon dioxide and other gases, the bones, chest cavity bones, ribs and sternum, they have to get compressed or come back to the original position. When they try to come back to the original position, now diaphragm relaxed and arched upwards. There it is inward, here it is upward. As a result, there is a compression on the lungs. Lungs will expel the breathing. So mechanism of breathing involves two things, inspiration and expiration. So breathing involves two stages. The process in which atmospheric air is drawn in is called inspiration, while expiration is the process by which the alveolar air is released out. So the movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. The diaphragm, external and internal or intercostal between the ribs, help in the generation of such gradient. Now what happens exactly in inspiration? Inspiration occurs when pressure within the lungs, we say intrapulmonary pressure, is less than the atmospheric pressure. There is negative pressure in the lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure. Inspiration is initiated by the contraction of diaphragm, as I said just now, which becomes flat and gets lowered. Diaphragm gets lowered, thereby increases the volume of thoracic chamber in the anterior-posterior axis. The contraction of external intercostal muscles lift up the ribs and the sternum, just now I said sternum, causing an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. And the overall increase in thoracic volume causes a similar increase in pulmonary volume. So the volume is getting increased. Abdominal muscles relax and allow compression of abdominal organs by diaphragm. The abdominal muscles play a passive role in inspiration. An increase in pulmonary volume decreases the intrapulmonary pressure to less than the atmospheric pressure, which forces the air from outside to move into the lungs. That's inspiration. So the pathway of the movement of fresh air into the lungs is, it starts with, let's come back to the diagram that I told you to practice. Yeah, here. So first it is the nostrils, external nares, then nasal cavity, then internal, okay, it's coming here, and then pharynx. So this tube-like structure, pharynx, and then from pharynx it is glottis. So we have got somewhere in this region larynx and glottis, and then from this region, now it is larynx, from larynx to trachea, this region, and trachea to bronchus, this region, and bronchus to bronchioles, this region, and bronchus to alveoli. This round structures will be there. These are called alveoli, and finally enters into the lungs. This is the pathway. Okay. What about expiration? Ulta, exactly the reverse of this. That is, we have got from alveoli. So release of carbon dioxide starts from alveoli and alveolar ducts, then branchioles to bronchus to trachea to larynx. So it goes this way, larynx, and larynx to glottis to pharynx to internal nerves to nasal cavities to external, and finally outside the body. This is how the expiration takes place. So here in doing so, in expiration also, let's come back to the specific one, what changes that happen in lungs. This is what happens. So expiration takes place when intrapulmonary pressure is higher. Here it is less. Here it should be intrapulmonary high than atmospheric pressure. Relaxation of the diaphragm and the contraction of intercostal muscles return the diaphragm and sternum to their normal position. You can see it is coming reverse, normal position. And this makes thoracic volume get reduced, and thereby pulmonary volume also gets reduced. This leads to an increase in intrapulmonary pressure to slightly above the atmospheric pressure, causing expulsion of air from lungs. You can see the arrow marks, you can see. And this expulsion of air from lungs is expiration. So the pathway, just now I said, that is right from alveoli to external nose through this. So we have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration and expiration with the help of additional muscles in the abdomen. On an average, a healthy man breathes 12 to 16 times a minute. Please check if you are healthy or not. 12 to 16 times a minute. Inspiration takes place for about 2 seconds and expiration for 3 seconds. That means expiration is or should be longer than inspiration. So inspiration is the active process as it is the result of muscle contraction. Expiration is the passive process as it is the resultant of relaxation of muscles. So I want you to practice this root of oxygen and root of carbon dioxide. Draw these diagrams and post it in